From Beyond Marketing, it's the 20-Minute Call, a podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, check out the 20-Minute Call hosted by me, James LeBarry. The term legend is often used too liberally, applied to individuals for merely a handful of achievements. However, our guest today embodies the true essence of a legend, and what's more remarkable is his humble perspective on his own contributions. Tony Uragallo doesn't see himself as anything out of the ordinary, yet his extraordinary contributions to the sport of skydiving since the early 1970s speaks volumes. He has dressed world champions for decades with his renowned brand, Tony Suits. Tony's journey in skydiving is nothing short of extraordinary. He has crafted tens of thousands of custom jumpsuits and spent a decade dedicated to parachute design and manufacturing. When that chapter closed, he pioneered the development of wingsuits, introducing innovations that propelled the sport into a new era. Beyond his craftsmanship, Tony is also an accomplished skydiver in his own right. With over 13,000 jumps, Tony has competed across nearly every skydiving discipline imaginable, starting with accuracy, progressing through style, 4-way, 8-way, 10-way, 16-way, and 20-way competitions, as well as crew and, of course, wingsuiting. He has claimed gold medals in various competitions across these disciplines. His achievements don't stop there. Tony also secured a gold medal in the World Base Race, outpacing competitors half his age in a breathtaking wingsuit descent down a mountain. Although Tony retired from active jumping in 2017, his legacy lives on. Tony Suits continues to be a staple at drop zones worldwide, a testament to his enduring impact on the sport. His contributions, both professionally and competitively, have not gone unnoticed. Tony's been rightfully recognized with induction into the International Skydiving Hall of Fame, a prestigious acknowledgement of his lifelong dedication and achievements in skydiving. Join me in welcoming Tony Uragallo, a true legend whose humility and accomplishments make him one of the most respected and admired figures in skydiving. Tony, welcome.
Well, thank you, James. That was brilliant. We should just end it here.
Yeah, it's funny to hear your life in a few paragraphs, and it's full of good things.
I want that. Can I get that in writing, that whole thing?
Yeah, I'll send that to you. Tony, thank you for joining me today. I'm so pleased to speak with you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm the one honored, mate. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, Tony, let's jump right in. There's a lot of life to cover, and I'm eager for my guest to learn about your story. So, Tony, you're from East London.
Yes.
The last place on earth one would think that a person would have a major impact on skydiving. Can you share some insight into your childhood and also share what your parents did when you were growing up?
That's interesting. My family had my parents had a fish and chip shop. And I've got early memories of being like 2 or 3 years old, of being in the fish and chip shop and outside it. And that's strange. But I used to work in the fish and chip shop on Fridays when they were busy. The don't eat meat thing on a Friday made it busy. And my old man wanted me to run the fish and chip shop after it. And I wanted to sew. And he said real men don't sew, or men don't sew, rather. And I just wanted to sew. And I quit bricklaying. I was a bricklayer at the time. And he wanted me to run the fish and chip shop, but I didn't like it. It was long hours, and all those people standing in line waiting on me. I was in charge of chips. I used to peel the chips out back, and then peel the potatoes, chip them, and then rush them out, soaking wet, put them in the pan, and it all sizzled up, and people waiting on chips, because chips took longer than fish. So they were always waiting on me, hundreds of people in there on a Friday. So I hated it. I broke away totally when I started skydiving. That was it. I was out of there. Used to love driving from East London all the way through London with Rob and Jeff from Symbiosis to go out to Thruxton in Wiltshire, beautiful part of England. You get out of the madness of London, and it just got better and better and better. In the rolling hills of Wiltshire, and there we were skydiving. I loved it and hated driving back on Sunday night. No, I was glad to leave London.
Well, I believe you were introduced to skydiving while being a reserve in the Parachute Regiment,
Yeah.
or the RHA Reserves. I mean, no offense, Tony, and I've known you for some time, but you don't really strike me as a military man exactly. What led you to joining the regiment?
I met one of my schoolmates that was in the TA, and he just said we go jump in and we fire big cannons, and they jump in with the cannons and the Land Rovers, and that was all quite fascinating. And I thought we enjoyed the jumping at the time, even though you had to carry a weapons container and a heavy rig and reserve off the drop zone after you landed. And then you would fire the guns. I used to lay the gun. I used to aim it, as it were, and fire it. A big 105 Packhowitzer. You get back to the base on Sunday and have to wash the thing and clean your rifle and all that. And I went skydiving, and you could steer the parachute, and I loved it. I landed near the cross on my first jump. So I never went back to the TA. In no time, I was dispatching the guys from the TA that I started jumping with. The guys from Thruxton came out to our TA centre in East London, in East Ham, East London. They gave us a brief rundown of skydiving. And a bunch of us went from the TA centre skydiving at Thruxton in Wiltshire. I never looked back. That was it. I was off and away.
You mentioned that when you were working in the fish and chip shop, that you wanted to sew and men didn't sew.
Yeah.
You must have been skydiving at the time. Was that your influence on wanting to sew?
Oh, yeah. As soon as I started skydiving, I started sewing. It just happened. My mum taught me on a domestic machine. I made her a dress. It was the first thing I made. And it was quite good. I bought patterns, and made her a dress. And that was that. My friend came back from the Gulch, Casa Grande, with a jumpsuit that was had rainbow stripes on it or something, And it was beautiful. I loved it, heavy cotton. And I laid it out on the floor and kind of copied it. I didn't pick it apart. We were just wearing flight suits from the Army and Navy store, any old crap, tracksuits to jump in. And so this thing for relative work was all the rave. And I was off and away. I said never again. I've told this story many times. On my mum's domestic sewing machine, sewing across the crotch on a domestic machine was impossible. And I said never again the first time. And then Rob Colpus asked me to make him one. I said never again. And then Bob Hyatt got me to make one. And I went and bought a commercial machine after that. Old Singer, I was making jumpsuits in my bedroom in London, going out jumping on the weekends. Pretty soon I moved to Florida because of the English winters. We just went out for turkey meat. We were the British 8-way team, and we won turkey meat. And I just realised I wanted to stay in Florida, and that was that. I was off and away.
Tony, what I want to understand about you a little bit is about your brain. You don't know how to sew a jumpsuit, but you did.
Yeah.
You make something sound like things that sound complicated, almost very simple to you. I going to learn to sew and I'll start building jumpsuits. And then later on in your career, it will be, hey, I think Jeff Nebukoff saying, hey, let's build some wingsuits. And all right, let's go ahead and do that. And, oh, I like it here in Florida. Let me just leave my life in London, all that you mostly know, and come across without, I imagine, total secure job. Tell me about your personality, Tony. How is it that what most people would look as an obstacle, you just like, yeah, let's give it a crack?
I think excitement is the word. If it excites you, it's easy. And you're going to learn it, aren't you, if it excites you. And to be excited, even now, I lie in bed until I get bored in the mornings, and then I go out and work. Because it's exciting what I'm doing right now. I'm building a house and doing stuff, like you say, that I don't know what I'm doing here. Building a spiral staircase. I've never done that in my life. But I just put this giant log in my house, and start attaching great lumps of oak to it and figure it out as you go along. Try and be careful that it's not going to all fall down, and talk to professionals when you can. But mostly I just figured it all out myself. And a lot of people saying you can't do that, that can't be done. And that's almost more inspiring. Some of my best competitions have been where people said I shouldn't be there, And it's even more exciting, isn't it? To be new to something and do well. And excitement leads, excitement rules. There you go.
How would you describe your sewing machine skills?
Oh, I think I'm pretty good. I used to do it all day, every single day. And again, excitement. I had this suit and I loved it, and I thought, wonder if it would do better with a half-inch here or a half-inch there, or arm sweep different. There's 1,000 things you can do differently, and you're only allowed to do one each time, otherwise you don't know the difference. So I get my computer guy to design this, with a half-inch here, and then cut it out. And I was actually excited when I plopped it on my table and I start sewing it. And I'd sit there for 3 days sewing this thing and then go out and jump it. I was only, 500 yards from the drop zone. I'd even land outside the shop sometimes and tell everybody to go outside, see all my woofos watch me land. What a laugh. I swoop in, terrified them. Yeah, so I just sewed all day. So I was pretty good, although not as good as some of the girls, because they sewed longer than me. They sewed literally all day.
I would imagine, Tony, that you are a wizard on a sewing machine for as much of it that you've done for decades.
I guess. Yeah. Something you do all day, every day. For how many years? It's got to be 40 years. How good are you doing something every day for 40 years,
There's that saying that in order to master something, you need to invest 10,000 hours into that activity. I imagine you have well beyond 10,000 hours on a sewing machine.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, 40 years. We're doing it all day long. I wish it had been music, maybe. No. That's about Eric Clapton. He's really good, but he wants to practice all the time. And so you're going to get good, aren't you, at anything that excites you, and you practice it all day long. Golf is like that, isn't it? I can do golf, but I can't practice. I get kind of bored practicing. And so style was like that. I hated practicing style and accuracy, but I was pretty good at it. And so you doing it.
Tony, you are from humble beginnings, and yet you went to Australia with your team Symbiosis and won the Australian Nationals.
Mm-hmm.
You came to the US for the turkey meet, and then you decide, I love skydiving. I'm going to come to the US and live there. But you don't have a lot of financial resources that I'm aware of. How were you able to navigate making such a big change of coming to America with little to nothing?
I sold my rig. I had my team rig and I sold it. When I decided to stay in Florida, I sold my rig. I bought a car, a sewing machine, and rented an apartment on Pretty Pond, and started sewing. Jump Shack sponsored me for a rig. So I had gear to jump, and I was organising out there. So that was a fun time because it was all new and you're getting free jumps because you're organising and making jump suits for people. I loved it. It was great. Looking at my window at Pretty Pond, realising the sun sets in a different place every day, I guess.
Is Pretty Pond a place in Florida?
In Zephyr Hills, yeah. It's just down the road from the drop zone in Zephyr Hills. It wasn't pretty, but it was called Pretty Pond.
So you're load organizing, which is wonderful to get free jumps, but it's not paying your bills. Were you essentially, for your survival, was that the birth of Tony Suits, just sort of organically?
Yeah, I was Symbiosis Suits in England, and I went out to Zephyr Hills, and I was calling it Symbiosis Suits there, but everybody else called it Tony Suits. So I just became Tony Suits. And you just live in hand to mouth. I enjoyed the first one, so much. I stayed. I thought I'll stay. But everybody left in the summer, and I didn't have the money to leave. And someone sent me an order for 3 suits from Norway, Karl Arneberg, and I had the money to fly home. But that was definitely living on the edge, reference money. Yeah, not much money going down then in those days.
But that would be a huge decision, wouldn't it? I mean, had you not made the move to Zephyr Hills, we might not be speaking right now.
Probably. I don't know. Yeah, who can tell? I was going to go to Australia. I loved Australia, like you said. I had a sewing machine out there and was making jumpsuits too. And I did a bricklaying job in Australia. I loved Australia, and I broke my leg there and came home. I went home to England, stayed with my mum and dad while I was healing, and I went out to Florida instead.
Your parents must have thought you were absolutely crazy.
Oh, yeah, blimey. I came home smashed up, good and proper. 5 breaks in my right leg. And I learned how not to use crutches on the stairs. Going downstairs, I got lifted away from the stairs on the crutches and slid down the stairs on my back. That was kind of horrifying. My mum was horrified, I remember. Anyway, I healed, although my right knee is crap.
I'm aware of that injury. Do you still feel the pain of that so many decades on from that injury?
Just my knee. Yeah, and the knee wasn't even broke. It was just the bone. I guess the tibia was broke at the top. But the knee itself was just overextended, I guess, and never bent very far all those years. That's back in 77, right? So I fell down a hole in the drop zone, and my good leg went down in a hole, and I squatted down on my heel on a knee that's not been there for 30 years. And that knee has been in shock ever since. And I'm now working on stairs. I'm building a house in the wetlands, so I put the living part up in the air, and the garage is underneath. So I go up and down stairs all day, every day, and it does my knees in totally. I'm living on my Luxican.
Tony, you built jumpsuits, of course, mostly in the earlier days and really even through till today. Your formation skydiving or RW suits, really gained in popularity. Was there an innovation or a person that started wearing your suits that really helped gain the popularity of your suits?
Oh, yeah. Going back, Tommy Pyrus and Jack Jeffries were on a team in DeLand, and I drew up the Pit Special, which I thought should have a slippery front, as per a Canadian suit that Michigan loved, Mike Michigan. And then I put spandex all over the back to pull it all tight, and a spandex forearm that me and Tommy Pyrus argued about constantly. And then we invented booties.
Well, sorry, Tony, what was the argument?
Oh, you needed a tight body, but baggy arms. You should have baggy forearms. And I tried spandex forearms and said, this is the way to go. And we argued about it because they thought you should have baggy forearms, which was the original slick-fronted suit. They came around pretty quick. Then we had the French team. Remember Tag Heuer? They were part of Pyrus's group, I guess. They got my suits. And then, that was it. We were off and away then, once the French and Tommy's team had them. And Jack Jeffries, of course.
A quick break here to address the Drop Zone owners listening to the pod. If you're a DZO, then you know the insanity of taking your passion and making it your business. Why'd you do that? Running a DZ is hard. Between the stressors of liability, 30-day payment terms on fuel after 4 weeks of miserable weather, and angry staff who are convinced they've been skipped in the rotation, you need a tool that helps reduce your stress. Enter Burble Software. All right. Conceived by a DZO who's been in the trenches just like you, Burble is the most sophisticated manifest and booking software on the planet. Your life as a DZO is hard enough, so don't be that DZO who tries to save a few bucks using software that wasn't built for us. Burble, the must-have drop zone management software for the 182DZ to the multi-turbine monster. Burble. When I last visited you before you retired, the manufacturing facility of Tony Suits in Zephyr Hills is enormous. And I also remember you just installed solar panels. A far cry from someone that was really operating solo and just building suits by themselves on demand. At what point did it become too much for you to be doing it all on your own?
Oh, that goes back a long way before the building. I was working in houses, in garages and living rooms and things, and doing it myself. But it got too busy. I started hiring people, and then you're standing over someone you hired, and you say, "No, not like that. No, no, just let me do it. Let me do it." You eventually get people helping you because of the numbers. And then that building was big, wasn't it? They said you can't do that either, build a big building just to make jumpsuits. I started that building, I was making parachutes and jumpsuits to Jonathan. Then I sold that to PD.
Hold on, Tony. That's a really big step. I was going to say that you were synonymous with making jumpsuits, and then you just start making canopies.
Yeah,
And most people that make them are engineers. What led you once again going, yeah, I'll make that, to making an elliptical parachute?
I saw a ridge soaring parachute, a parapon parachute with the corners missing on the back. And I started making kites to see what that was like. I thought I'll make one, and I was making kites, and people were saying, "Well, how can you cut the corners off? How can you steer it if you cut those corners off? You lost the steering section." And what was the other one? There was a few. What's wrong with the rectangle? And I said, I don't know. It don't remind me of the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull, where they're saying, "What's wrong with hunting for food all day? Why do you need to be going up trying barrel rolls?" And so I called the parachute Jonathan. That was a laugh as well, but it was quite a lot of work. Making prototypes of parachutes was expensive, and you never see much difference. When you made a wingsuit, a change in a wingsuit, I saw a big difference. And that's a suit and a wing. That was much more my thing than making parachutes. PD were better at making parachutes. They came out with a stiletto, which I enjoyed because it was similar to my parachute, but I was pretty happy to get out of that game. And then was bored when I just went back to jumpsuits. It was a bit boring, so I started wingsuits. We made one for Patrick de Gaardon. That was the start of that. And then when Jeff came in, we got it going good. And I really enjoyed making wingsuits and testing them. What fun. I had 2 jumps for testing a wingsuit. I had my PPC run, a competition run where you dive, and then you either do glide ratio or speed across the ground or time, how slow you can fall for 30 seconds or whatever. A minute nowadays. I loved it. If it was clear, I'd do the speed run, whatever. If it was cloudy, I'd fly around the clouds. What a great job.
Tony, just to come back to the canopy portion, I believe you sold the canopy division, if you will, of Tony Suits to Performance Designs. Is that right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I think you mentioned that was the first time you ever had sort of money in your pocket.
Yeah. I got into stock trading. I was trading on all the .com things, and it crashed. I lost loads of money. So that was the end of that. I've never been very good with money. I'm not a businessman. Good at painting maybe, but not business.
When I visited you and you were so excited, you were working on a prototype of a wingsuit when I visited you in Zephyr Hills a few years ago, and you were like a kid in a candy store. You were so excited about changing this little thing here, this little thing there, and then couldn't wait to go back up that afternoon to see what those modifications had done. But with the money, I take it, with that money that you did have, I mean, you just said that you lost it on the stock market with the crash, but did you use some of that to start the wingsuit part of the business?
No, just the jumpsuits started the wingsuit. Jumpsuit started the parachutes, and jumpsuit started the wingsuit. Expensive to actually start. It's just labor, isn't it? I was doing all the sewing, and me and Jeff were doing all the cutting, and it wasn't that expensive to start. We had good designs from the very beginning. We're both testing it, and we're both the same size, so we could make 2 suits and go jump them, and then interchange and see the difference.
You were making jumpsuits for Patrick de Gaardon,
Yeah.
Who was really on the forefront of wingsuit at the time. And as I understand it, you were making his suits and then he was sewing the wings on. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'd make him the suits, and he'd ask for zips in the arms, and I always wondered why, and to leave the side seams open. And yeah, he was putting the wings in. And then I was devastated when he died. And I was doing the same thing with Adrian Nicholas, the DJ, English DJ. He died too. I was making suits for both of them, and then they both died. So I wasn't that interested. I jumped a Birdman suit, and it was a really windy day, and I didn't move across the ground far. And then I turned downwind. I got out in the wrong place, I think. I went downwind and scooted across the ground and then turned back. And it was a pretty boring jump, I thought. And I wasn't into wingsuiting at the beginning. And I thought I'll just see how this goes because it was so complicated. The first ones that had all the piano hinges down the sides that you had to rig the thing. And so me and Jeff said we could make it easier to install. And then we matched the good guys pretty much at the beginning. And it went like a rocket from there, you know. But yeah, it was so exciting to redesign the thing and make it better. And you're doing 3.0 glide ratios, you know, and then 4.0 and I got it on a windy day. And there's such great numbers. And you're falling at 30 miles an hour. And you could go back up. We discovered the flare. You could flare back up. And skydivers don't go back up. You know, so that was exciting as well. And this piece of kit, this cloth, this bundle of cloth can do this. I thought that was great. I used to love it. And you'd invent this thing in your mind, the shape, and you, in 3D, you carve the patterns in 1D and build it and inflate it. That was the most exciting time, was inflating the thing with a leaf blower to see if it looks like what you envisioned, you know. And then you go jump it. And you'd form an opinion after jumping it, and then you'd look at your numbers on a GPS in the later days. And you'd form a second opinion, and then you decided whether to put it on the market was the hardest part.
Tony, how old were you when you made your first wingsuit jump?
I don't know. I don't keep records. I don't know. It was only, oh God, what was that? It was after Birdman was invented. When was Birdman invented? Shall I Google it?
No, that's all right. I think where I'm going with it is it's not that you were in the prime of your career when you made, your first wingsuit jump. I believe that you've been already skydiving for quite some time. And I suppose that the reason why I asked that is I know that when you were in your 60s, you were, the oldest person on a mountain, let's say with the base race, that's a speed event. And you were literally twice the age of many of the folks there, and you were just leaving them in your wake.
Well, I could outfloat them. I had the better suit, is what it was. I had the Apache and the Rebel, which was after the Apache, and they were still jumping the old stuff, you know. I could outfloat them. And so if they started to beat me, I could just tip up more and go faster and catch him up. And they would open so low. I beat Frode in the finals. Frode. And it's just because he pulled so low. That was the suit as much as anything else, I think, in the early days. Although I did okay at the end then when they all had the same suit. They all had my suit in China. And I still made the finals both years in China. So it wasn't just a suit. I suppose I was okay at it.
Hey everyone, just a quick note before starting today's show. If you're a fan of the 20-Minute Call, I'd like to personally invite you to become a member of a budding community on Patreon. By becoming a patron of the show, you can join me behind the scenes to discuss options for future guests, chat about things we've already heard, and gain access to some show swag. Details on how to become a patron can be found in the show notes. I'd love for you to join me. Okay, on with today's show. Can you describe your very first base jump with a wingsuit on? What was that like?
I loved it. I was away. When I jumped the wingsuit, I was off and away. That was great. I was terrified. James Ball took me base jumping. I'd done 2 base jumps with Dennis McGuinn off a tower, and the bridge day I did, and I didn't think much of it. Just hop and pop and try and land this parachute you don't know in the trees. I didn't think much of it. And then I went out to Brento and jumped with James Bull, a Brummie, and he made me jump in my jeans and a t-shirt. And I'm still on the edge of that mountain, terrified. Every rock had my name on it. It's such an ugly-looking thing trying to kill me. And I did a 8-second delay, whatever, and hop and pump, and flew the parachute down, and was terrified. And then when he let me put the wingsuit on the third jump, and I leapt off, and you fall down. The ground's coming up. The talus, as it's called, is coming up at you, and the suit inflates after a couple of seconds. And you just take off, and the ground's going away from you, and you feel like you're going up. You feel just like a bird, to quote a cliche, that you've just leapt off this rock and you fly away. It was brilliant. I totally loved it. I was right into base jumping. It seemed quite safe to me, much safer than going down the edge of a mountain in your jeans or even a tracking suit. To fly away from the mountain and I was opening at 1,500 feet at Brento, which seemed fine with that big old parachute. You got a giant pilot chute that you let go of, and bang, your main is open. As soon as you let go of the pilot chute, it seems like you've got this giant parachute to float down under. Although the big pilot chute makes the landings crap. If you could have a collapsible pilot chute, they'd land a lot better, but no one dares to have a collapsible pilot chute on a base jump, because that's your life, isn't it, that pilot chute? So, yeah, the first jumps were great. I didn't like the way everybody kept dying all around me. That's what I didn't like.
I mean, it's ironic. You just said it seemed real safe to me, but also in the same phrase, so many people have died.
Look at those numbers.
Yeah, it's troubling. One thing that has impressed me, I listened to another podcast that's mostly about base jumping called Exit Point. And one thing that I'm really struck by with all the interviewees is almost the science of base jumping now versus in the earlier days, understanding wind conditions, understanding numbers that one would deem, a jump more safe than another. There's just so much data that goes into the calculus of whether a jump is within your capability or not.
Yeah.
But the way you describe it, though, it sounds very like, it was my third jump when I put my wingsuit on, and off I went, and it was so fun. And it sounds almost like it came very naturally to you, but it sounds almost non-scientific. Am I right in saying that?
Well, I was with people that knew the area and know not to jump in the middle of the day. You get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go jump at Brento. You do one jump and you quit for most of the day until the evening. You go up again when the winds are calm, because people know the wind. That's when you go with the winds. I was going to say necessity is the mother of invention, that people had to learn how these winds work. They go up and down the valley. I forget the two names. And depending on the heat of the day. And if you're opening exits, although those guys don't die too often, do they, that open the exits, but they need to study the conditions and understand what's safe and not. Brevant was like that. You couldn't jump Brevant in a certain time of day in France. And Chamonix, they learned not to do that in the evenings or the morning. I forget. But we used to parapont there, parapont, I guess. I forget the names now. I've only been retired 5 minutes and I've forgotten all the names. We used to fly paragliders there, and you could base jump there off Brevant. Yeah, they learned not to do base jumps there in a certain time of the day.
Tony, aside from probably being a little bit unsettled with so many people dying around you, did you have any jumps where you thought, "Oh man, what am I doing? This is getting a little bit too close to the edge for my comfort"?
Only one time, Paganelli. I was going to go high around you jump off and you end up facing 180 to your exit line. You go around the mountain and it's angled, so you can, the further to the left, the better you're doing. So I thought I'll go really high around here, but I flew too slow and I ended up stalling out. And I went around the mountain really low, and I opened, and didn't have anywhere to land. It was all like grapevines. And I'm flying, going, oh my God, I've nowhere to land. And there was a grapevine open, and I turned in and landed. That was lucky. Golly, all these spikes, all these all these lumps of wood sticking up in the air. That would have been horrible. So I thought that was lucky. You don't want to rely on luck, do you? You want to be in control of the situation. And I did that jump 3 times, and it was the second time that I stalled the suit trying to fly too slow to go around high. But you're better off with speed than slow. Everybody knows that.
Mm.
And so I started to doubt it. And then you get so many people trying so hard, is what it was, wasn't it? They're flying too close to the mountain and doing barrel rolls and flying under trees and things. Another one bites the dust. It was one a week, typically in the summer. And then it was one a day for 13 days when I quit. That was when I quit. I was going to China as well, invited to China, the race in China. I said, no, I'm done. And pretty soon after that, I quit skydiving too. My right knee was rubbish. Climbing mountains with a bad knee was not very good.
It's remarkable, though, during that time. I mean, we're only talking the height of your base jumping career was really just 10 or 11 years ago. It's not that long ago, even though you're now in retirement, where you were featured in Outside Magazine. You had sponsorship with Adidas. You were getting some major press on your accomplishments. What was that like? And I'm sure unexpected.
I was so high. And loving every second, of course. Rushing around. We spend the summers in Europe. Doesn't that sound posh? Just going around the different mountains in Norway, Italy, France, Switzerland in a camper van. We kept the camper van on the drop zone at Neverhaven and trucked around Europe for 4 years. And not 4 years, but in the summers. And then I come back to Florida for the winters. And I was going to competitions and doing good, Yeah, I was 60 years old and winning competitions. I was loving it. I was so high. I couldn't believe it. But skydiving was like that from the very beginning. You do one thing and you start to get bored with whatever, and you go on to do that. And then you get bored with that, and you always find something new to do. And loved it. And that was just a continuation of the same old thing of skydiving. And what can you do next? And I still see on Facebook what they're doing, what they're doing now. And it's still amazing me how cool skydiving is, that they're still thinking of new stuff to do. Yeah, I love it. What a great sport, huh?
It is remarkable. I mean, you're in your, early 70s, roughly?
Yeah, 70.
I mean, that many of these guys that you were jumping with that are still going are your peers, even though they're much younger. I imagine that a lot of people were inspired by you, Tony, because most people come age 60 are thinking about retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were 60, you're winning the base race in China.
I was peaking.
With a finish line underneath like this suspended gondola. Incredible, really.
Yeah, the finish line was the cable car. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. And I had such a floaty suit that first year I was in the Rebel, which was designed for slow fall for Gary Connery to land in the boxes. And I took it to the base race, and you flew out around a mountain, did a turn, and the finish line was a cable car. It was way below me. So I had to put my head down, and that's how I got so fast. And I couldn't look up at the cable car. I had to put my head down to get down to make sure you went below the cable car. That was terrifying as well. I did 2 jumps in practice and said, I don't like this much. The next day it was a bit mank weather, and they were out there trying to jump in the rain. And I was back at the hotel reading and asking them how it was, and every day was like that. And they thought I had something up my sleeve that I didn't need to go out and practice. But I was just terrified of it. I did quite well on the day. And then later on, I had a faster suit in the next years, I only did it 2 or 3 times. Did I do it 3 times or 2 times? I did 2 times. So, yeah, that was kind of crazy. Yeah, crazy sport, eh?
I find intriguing about you is you're very matter-of-fact, ho-hum. But your career, I mean, do you ever reflect going, oh my God, the life that you've lived is extraordinary?
Yeah. Oh, it could have got me a few times. But I was riding a Triumph Bonneville in London when I was 16, And I nearly died there 3 times as well, in London doing 100 miles an hour in and out of the traffic. So I guess I've always had a life like that was a little bit crazy. But I never went to war. That's got to be the craziest one.
Mm.
Yeah, it was always fun.
Yeah, Tony, when you reflect on your life, well, firstly, it's not like you're in an old home. Now you're building your house.
Yeah.
It seems to me with your personality that it goes from hot to cold to hot, meaning you did RW, formation skydiving, and really excelled for that for many years, roughly a decade. You built parachutes for a decade. You were really in, we haven't even talked about how prevalent you were in the free fly scene in those early days. But it's like you go at something really hard for several years, and then all of a sudden it's as if there's a switch. Up,
Yeah.
kind of tired of that, and then on to another thing. Yeah, it's
Excitement again. This is exciting, and to be able to be unstable, to go sit flying, and whoa, I was so unstable on the first jumps, mainly because I had booties on. How many people like that? And you establish you as a national champion, and here you are going unstable, trying something new. In 3 jumps time, you wondered why you thought that was so hard. You just learn it, don't you? And you're excited by this, and there's all these people coming on and loving this new event, discipline, whatever. And yeah, it's excitement, and you can always find excitement in skydiving, can't you? Be it smaller parachutes and swoop in. The guys on PD team said I invented pond swooping too, because I held the first competition. And we were swooping through the skies with our parachutes and diving them at the ground. And everybody said that they're so dangerous because the parachute dives so long. And the stiletto was better because it comes out the dive. But I didn't like that. I liked the parachute to dive longer. And then you swooped across the ground. And that was so much fun. And then we were swooping on water. And then it was free flying, I guess. And then it was wingsuiting. And yeah, it's exciting. You can always go on and do something new if you can afford the equipment, of course. Ha!
I recently listened to a podcast with Matt Gertis from Squirrel.
Mm-hmm.
He was very complimentary of you and Jeff, stating that the two of you on the scene and the innovations that you both brought to wingsuiting really propelled the discipline forward. You all were instrumental.
Oh, that was nice of him.
Yeah. And when you look at that, though, you were really on the forefront of everything. You were on the forefront of when formation skydiving really started warming up in the 70s. And then there was free fly. Certainly, we've talked about wingsuiting, but you never trumpet your own horn. We didn't even mention, of course, the elliptical canopy that you designed with the Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Revolutionizing really formation skydiving jumpsuits with the Pit Special and those magical booties that all RW jumpers love. But you never blow your own horn. It's almost as if you're just so humble, Tony. Have you ever had an ego? It feels like that you don't.
Oh, I think I have. Yeah, just got to keep it in check, ain't you? But I think I was just lucky. It was just we went to the first training camp to do four-way back loop four-way, and they changed the rules just before we went. And we come back to the nationals. We were the only team that practiced the sequential rules, And so it was just luck. And if you're first there, you're probably going to be more experienced than everybody else. And it was my job to make the equipment. I think I was just lucky, really. And maybe you got to have a little bit of talent, but it was mostly luck, I think. I've just been in the right place at the right time, with the right people, of course, and living on a drop zone. I think it's just been in the right place at the right time. Yeah, in a great sport.
Tony, your career has spanned, 40, 50 odd years.
50 years.
Have there been any folks that you really look up to who are your mentors or who are instrumental in your growth through the sport?
Oh, man, there's loads, tons. Jack Jeffries was great to be around. Dan BC was a good coach. I even enjoyed Jeb Corliss. Jeb Corliss was good. I enjoyed him. Who else? Oh my God. Pete Allen was an incredible flyer, as was my team, Symbiosis. And then, the same group that was there for years. Oh my God, there's hundreds of them. All the people I was around that I looked up to and listened to. The Golden Knights, I loved jumping with them. They asked me to jump with them at Nationals, and we won. We won 16 at the American Nationals. It was great being with them. The dirt dive was just like the skydive. The skydive was just like the dirt dive. You just went from one point to the next. We did 13 points in 16 on one jump. Those guys, everybody I jumped with, everyone was around. And Craig Girard was always a fun one to be around as well.
His name seems to come up in almost every episode.
Yeah.
Someone has a Craig Girard story. It seems like we all do.
He's such a nice bloke.
Tony, skydiving has taken you all over the world. I mean, quite literally. Is there, when you reflect on all the places that you've been and all the things that you've seen and all the jumps that you've made, when reflecting on it, is there one that when you think back on it, it makes you smile going, yeah, that was very special?
Loads of those as well. Australia, Norway, Switzerland, all of it. It's all brilliant. You just go where the action is, as it were. Just loved it. Switzerland was so beautiful. For $90, you can buy a pass for a month where you get free bus up and down the valley. You get free cable car up the mountains. There's a train at the top of the mountain can take you all the different jumps. And you can jump all day long for nothing, for free. And once you've paid this $90. And then there's a pub full of skydivers down the end. There's skydivers packing in all the fields. Oh, you mustn't call them skydivers. They're base jumpers. It's not skydiving. That's from my eyes. This is when I jump off that mountain, I'm going skydiving. The valley, yeah, the Lauterbrunnen Valley, everybody must go there. And that was incredible to see people packing in fields just in this strange place. And this pub, and people living everywhere around this pub and in the hotels. And it wasn't even that much expensive. Norway was expensive, and you didn't seem to get much for your money, whereas Switzerland is expensive, but you get your money's worth. I love that. And then we went there with our camper van, of course, lived in the camper van in their campgrounds. We lived underneath one of the exits in the valley called Dumpster, and the base jumpers would jump and land, and they walk through our campground to get to the bus. They'd all come by for a cup of tea, and I'd hide my beer, and because it was so expensive. Norway too, we had the shower filled with beer, and from England, we hung out in England with a lady who ran the canteen, and so she took us to our cheap beer place, and we filled the shower with beer and wine. I went to Norway, and beer is like $15 for a glass of beer. And people would come by, and Mary would say, "Do you want a beer?" And I'd no, shh, don't sell, don't offer my beers up because it's so expensive. And it was such nice beer that I had in England.
This podcast is sponsored by Beyond Marketing, the digital marketing agency for the skydiving industry. Now, I'm not a fan of lots of ads during a podcast. I mean, who likes ads? So I'll stop talking about how marvelously wonderful Beyond Marketing is. But if you're curious about what the amazing people of Beyond Marketing do to help drop zones and manufacturers thrive, then you should check out their website at dropzone.marketing. That's dropzone.marketing. Well, let's pivot from there. Tony, you were inducted into the International Skydiving Hall of Fame. I mean, just a tremendous award and recognizing all that you've contributed to the sport. What did it mean to you?
Oh, that was everything. That was so fine. What a finish to do that. Just when I was getting out of it, to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I loved it. And I went to a couple more. One last year in DeLand and Daytona. And I took my blazer along. I was so proud to the Hall of Fame. That was fabulous. I loved it. Yeah, that was brilliant. And Kurt Curtis, he was there from me at the beginning as well. Going to Pope Valley, he's a big name in the Hall of Fame thing, the museum, as it were. he introduced me, and I did a rubbish speech, but he was right there with me. And from Pope Valley, we went there, in the 70s, early 70s. Me and you and I painted the call sign on the runway. And I lived there for ages in Pope Valley. Well, not ages, a few weeks. And I loved it. It was also fine.
It just occurs to me, Tony, that you're almost like the British skydiving version of Forrest Gump. Uh, you played on the stock market as Forrest did. Maybe you didn't have Apple stock.
Yeah.
You've literally run around the globe chasing your passions and inventing innovations that have really pushed the sport forward. It's remarkable.
Stumbling over success. Yeah, I guess. Thank you. I guess that's a compliment.
Yeah, I'd say it's a compliment. One of my
Yeah,
favorite
right.
movies, I'd say. Do you miss it, Tony?
No, I'm not physical. No, I gave it up because I was living in the fast lane, and then I wasn't very healthy in the last year or two, and I still had this same weird psoriasis disease that I have to take a drug for, and I just didn't feel strong. And you got to be on your game, right? To live in that world, if you're not on your game, you're going to die. It's going to get you. And no, it was easy to stop and just sit back and laugh at it all and remember it all. And I loved it. No, I don't feel like a has been, as it were. I loved it. I had a great life. And now I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying building staircases. And I did brickwork again for the first time in a million years out front of the house. I designed the ground to slope down in front of the house so that I could build stairs down from the house with a planter either side of the stairs. And I just planted roses in it, and these roses, we made our own dirt, even from the horse and the donkey poop. I have 3 donkeys on a horse now, me and Mary. And we collected all the poop in the pile, and I put all the leaf shavings and grass shavings and everything in a big pile and turn it over every now and again. And after a couple of years, this was black dirt. And in Florida, that's pretty rare, gold dust, right? I built the planter. It's quite wide. It's got to be 50 feet wide, and the stairs in the middle, and filled the planter with this dirt we made, this compost, and we planted in it. And I don't know what's going to happen here, but these roses have doubled in size just a few months of winter, and they're covered in flowers, these beautiful roses. And the little girls tell me they smell lovely. I can't smell them from when I broke my leg. I lost my sense of smell. And I don't smell a lot of things, which is good sometimes. And
But Tony, sorry to interrupt, but what strikes me is you speak as passionately about the donkey poo and the cow poo and black soil in Florida as you would base jumping. It's clear that if your mind is engaged, that's where you're happiest.
yeah, because you created something, and this is earthy, isn't it? More earthy than jumping out of airplanes. It might seem silly, like sliding down a mountain skiing, even though they're both really exciting. Here I turned horse poop and leaves and grass cuttings into this soil that these plants love it. They're grown. They could have all died, right, from this thing we created, but they didn't. They doubled in size during the winter. And I was even worried that we was going to freeze them all to death, but we didn't have a freeze because we live near the ocean. There's Mary in the room now.
Hello, and James.
It's Mary.
Hey, Mary, how are you?
I am fine. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so great. Really enjoying reliving Tony's career.
Oh, he's, oh my gosh, I am so impressed. I don't know if that's the right word, but he continues to recreate himself in this new environment as strongly as he did in skydiving. He is engaged. He is, wow. Wow.
Well, this is Earth.
That's hardly the right word. But he wows me. He's an artist. He's a creator. His mind never goes into retirement, so to say. He is always looking to the next project, mapping it out in his mind and bringing it to fruition. He doesn't just think it and set it aside. He thinks it and makes it real. It's extraordinary. He is a force. so amazed by him.
I'm so glad you walked into the room to say that, because, what seems so normal to Tony is extraordinary to the rest of us. And it's clear to me that it's almost as if Tony has cracked a little bit of the code in terms of living. Is you see something that you're passionate about and it engages your brain, and then you go after it, with a fervor. And that's all that Tony has ever done. And just organically, it turns into something successful. And as Tony being Tony has created so much innovation in skydiving, and now, of course, in his own personal life.
Agree. Absolutely. I think you've nailed it. Yeah, he's an extraordinary person. And so many people retire. So many people our age are like, oh, I'm retired. What am I going to do with my life? And he's up in the morning. This staircase that he built is a work of art. And with him explaining this to me over the last couple of years, designing it in his mind and then verbalizing and not really putting it on paper, but he had the vision. And I can see his words become reality. It's a work of art. I can't wait to see what he does next.
That is a huge testament. You sound like a proud, beaming wife who is not bored, with their husband. It's lovely to hear.
Never. Yeah, never. He's always a step away from what's next. I don't know that we'll ever really, sit in the rocking chairs on the porch and be content with that.
I'm dying to.
Did you hear that?
I want to paint. I want to paint. I want to retire to paint. I'm fed up building. It's bloody hard work. And my knees don't like it. I want to paint. And that's such a thrill. With just a flick of the brush, you can make something that doesn't look like anything into something in your mind that you're looking for. And it was so easy instead of having to saw on wood for a day. Just a flick of the brush.
Tony, your brain fascinates me. It's amazing that many people will say, oh, I'd like to do that, but I can't because insert excuse, like, oh, I won't be any good, and you just do it. And it's okay, it sounds like, if the first renditions are ugly or not very good or poorly constructed or whatever, that's just part of the process, and you're completely good with that.
It's a learning thing, isn't it? You don't get upset by your mistakes. It's just a learning curve. And nowadays we have YouTube, of course, to help us. You can learn whatever you want on YouTube and then apply it. And you get such good results. And again, there you go. You're excited by doing something new because you just threw down some paint. Again, the excitement leads you on to do it all day long, perhaps, and you're going to get good at it, aren't you, if you're excited about something that you're doing all day long.
Tony, I think that the next thing for you, once you get bored of painting, is perhaps being a life coach, because there's so many people that don't start something because of fear. And you seem to have no fear.
Yeah. People that grew up with a lot of criticism, perhaps, and they're frightened of that, of being criticized. I was always criticized, but you just go with it, don't you? And you beat them in a competition, those people that told you can't do that. And so you go, I'll have some more of that.
I was going to ask, Tony, as we wrap, what advice would you give? But I think that we've been listening to advice subconsciously. Just get out there and do it.
Yeah, just go do it. Just find what makes you fun. Yeah. To hate your job you're going to spend all day doing, you might hate your home life, and then you sleep the other third. What kind of a life is that? Get out and have fun.
I should mention to our listeners that your wife is Mary Farwell Uragallo, who is well known in skydiving circles. And Mary, I had a podcast the other day with Albert Birchtold and hearing his early days at Skydive Cross Keys, and you were right in the thick of the story.
An extraordinary time. It's been a wonderful life. This life of skydiving has, taken us around the world. Met so many people, wonderful people, amazing, and many of them you're interviewing. So, no regrets.
That's the best part, isn't it? Going all around the world with this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And having fun when you get there, even though all you do is go to the airport and the drop zone and back to the airport. But sometimes you get to see the country, And that's so fabulous, isn't it? You know, instead of just going and sitting on the beach somewhere.
Yeah, and meeting people for who we are. Skydiving is really for us, or for me anyway, a community of people who are working together on a single goal to get it. You go up in the airplane, and all politics and anything else that you're thinking about just washes away. You are in the moment, and that's all that matters. And you're with friends, and it's perfect.
I remember thinking that. I was really angry sometimes about something, and I don't want to jump. I can't be bothered. I'm angry. And you go jump, and I thought, well, I'm laughing my head off now. I was pissed just before that, and now look, I'm laughing after I went jumping. Yeah, everybody should go skydiving. It should be prescribed by doctors. Even if it was only a tandem. What about that? Doctors prescribe tandems to people with depression or something. I don't know.
Living in the moment. Yeah, it's a great life, and we're continuing.
It's the ultimate paradox, isn't it? Where on the surface, people say, "Oh, you're crazy."
Yeah.
But just like base jumping or skydiving or anything that takes you beyond what you think you're capable of, and you know, it's almost cliched, but it's so true that's where it's at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
No, to have fun.
Being real, in the moment, enjoying life.
We're only here for a short time. It doesn't take long, it seems to me. I was 19 5 minutes ago learning to skydive. And now I'm 70 and having trouble getting out of a chair. Oh, my God. That didn't take long at all. But what a laugh. What a ride, eh? Intense, short ride.
No doubt, Tony. You've lived. You've truly lived. I think that's a great stopping point. And what a happy circumstance to have Mary walk in the room and hear her talk about you, which is great, because you will never. I've never seen you, Tony, sort of toot your own horn, and it's good to hear someone tooting it for you. Thank you so much, Tony and Mary. It was a pleasure having you on the program today.
Thank you both.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure.
Go on, James.
Pleasure.
Hey, man. See you around, buddy.
See you around.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you always have the latest episode, which is released every Monday. If you want to contact the team, our email address is podcast@beyondmarketing.xyz. This episode was edited and engineered by Garnet Znydrick of the YouTube channel Blue Skies Fun Days. Thanks for listening, and join us next week for our next episode.